So looking at it from a very holistic perspective, understanding how does your business model operate in the current business environment, and especially the environment we find ourselves in today, it's especially important to kind of find out what are the new technology trends out there, what are the new industry forces that's emerging and the market forces that's emerging. And we can definitely see there's massive macro and microeconomical changes happening. So this is kind of a very holistic approach that I have towards working with entrepreneurs and startups. And I look forward to sort of sharing little bits of wisdom and nuggets with you all tonight.
Great. And we also have the Marka today. Marka, our Elegant Accelerator mentor and expert. Marka, maybe you also can introduce yourself and tell a bit more about your background as well.
Hi, Slava. Hi, Ladel. And hi, everybody. And welcome to this great event, as always, that is now a habit for Elegant Club. So I'm one of the mentors. And what are my services, or what are my areas of specialism? So I'm specialized in mostly in sustainability, corporate social responsibility, but as well, I use an holistic approach, which is about the strategy and business modeling. So in my professional life, I live with numbers, and hence I'm in between the analytics, operations, and strategy. And that is what I do as well as a mentor.
Great. Thank you, Marka. And I guess we also have Bulen Osman. Bulen Osman is our special guest today as well. Bulen, if you can introduce yourself as well to our audience before we start the session. So please.
Great. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Bulent. I'm from the UK, just outside London. I sold my SaaS tech business last year to a private equity firm in Los Angeles. So I built it from scratch. We built it across the UK and the US and other parts of Asia Pacific. I sold the business and I ended operational duties at the end of last year. So as Slava knows, in the last 3 or 4 months of this year, I decided to be an advisor to different boards, and currently I'm a chairman of a tech startup in London. I'm on the board as an NED for 2 other tech startups also in the southeast of England, and I'm currently talking to a few others as well. And I met Slava in an event a month or 2 ago. He asked me very kindly to join this forum, and I'm delighted to be here, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Bulent. And we also have the Rizwana, our another special guest today. Rizwana, if you can join us and introduce yourself as well, please do so. And yes, we have our special guest today to join and discuss the dialogue. So please, Rizwana, if you can switch on your sound and camera, please.
Hi there. I'm having a few technical issues with my video, so I'll just introduce myself. My name is Rizwana. I'm a mentor for startups and a startup consultant as well. A number of years ago, I was working with a healthcare startup and I helped build it up operationally. So I did some operational management, and that's my experience that I can give to startups. So I do some various mentoring and advisory work with accelerators around the world. So that's my experience, and I'm very happy to join.
Thank you very much, Rizwana. And also what I would like to ask our audience today, maybe to also share some points. What would you like to know today about business strategy and sales? Any concerning points, anything in particular? Because we touch on quite wide topic today about business strategy, sales, how to react to the current situation in order, what's need to be done, how to find your first customers and how to keep existing ones. So if you don't mind, please share in chat what exactly would you like to discuss today, or what would you like to know today? So then we can make sure that we answer your questions. So if anyone, please share your comments and questions. what would you like to discuss today? I think it's very important because the world is changing quicker than we think. So let's make sure again we discuss and give some relevant contents today for you. So please, in the meantime, if you can ask the questions and ask what would you like to do today. And also feel free to introduce and say what's your background, where you came from. Engage in large B2B customers as a new startup. All right, that's very interesting. We will have the topic about B2B sector. Definitely, we will touch that point. But please ask more and share more questions. We are happy to touch. And just in the meantime, today, just a kind of reminder, today we have a special workshop, business strategy and sales in a tech startup in 2020. We need to respond to the current situation of the lockdown, the coronavirus, and also we need to think what would happen next, how to create a strategy relevant not only for the current situation, but also for the future, how to make sure we will be able to engage with the customers afterwards in the following season and what's need to be done. So please, again, one more time, feel free to ask your questions. And yes, today we speak about business strategy. And first of all, please let me share the contact details. We are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, email, and WhatsApp group. So if you'd like to connect, you're more than welcome to do so. And today the session we have, it's about when and how to make first sales, and also how to define a B2C and B2B strategy regarding sales, and also the business model, how to make sales process sustainable even in such very tricky, difficult time, and what are the sales strategy and channels we can have, different business models, sales tools and KPIs, and what's the requirement for startup founder regarding the sales, and is it required to be a salesperson as a startup founder? And also we would raise tough questions, what to do if you don't have any sales, when it's a sign to stop doing your startup or business, or maybe it's a sign to reshape your business strategy and model. And yes, tips and tricks Q&A session. So again, you are more than welcome to ask questions. It's a free discussion. You are more than welcome to contribute. And first of all, please introduce yourself in the chat and share your social media. So let me give a few words about myself. My name is Slava Baranovsky. I'm the founder of Elegant Club. It's a community of tech entrepreneurs working on the digital tech startups in the UK and all across Europe. I'm an entrepreneur in residence of Brunel University, London, international speaker, a mentor at Halt Founders Lab of International Halt Business School. I'm running a software development company for more than 15 years already. And helping other startup founders to build their own businesses. And also I'm a startup founder myself. So I'm coming through the same journey of facing the same challenges we are going to raise today. Again, before we start, just if you're interested to know more about Elegant Club, feel free to go to our website. You can find more info about events we run. And this event is one of more than 12 events we scheduled for this summer. So again, you're more than welcome to take a look and see what's attracting you, and more than welcome to join our following sessions. And I would like to, again, to start and maybe to discuss about how to make your first sale if you're just about to launch your tech startup, or maybe you just thinking about what would be the first approach, how to make it, and when, when it's a good moment when you're building your startup. And just kind of the beginning, that definitely it's great if you can try to share your idea to other people at idea stage, and without building a product, and just to start talking to people and see how do they react to your startup idea, and maybe to see if they're interested in your product or service before you actually start to do any development. So yes, the point is that's a great to start selling approach, selling process at idea stage. And there are some good points about that, you know, because that's there is no investment requirement to talk to people at idea stage. You can get very quick real-time feedback about what they think. There are no operational costs at idea stage because you still, you know, just have an idea. And also it can save you a lot of time and money because you can see the reaction of people, you can respond, and you can reshape also your product. And also it's quick yes or no test if, again, people willing to see maybe your prototype or MVP, or they're completely not interested. And thanks a lot for your questions. We have a few questions about how to gain access and sell to companies like NHS, NatWest, the big corporates. Great, we definitely will touch it. And also the next one, if you're not in position to sell your services at present, can you begin to monetize your business with pre-orders? If so, how would you explain this proposition to customers? And also, thanks. I'm very thankful for your questions. Hi, everyone. Yes, Kingsley, a founder of Optimis, providing the claims automating platform. Okay, Kingsley, if you can also share your LinkedIn profile so people can follow up. And yeah, I'm hearing the replies already to Catherine's question. But now I would like to, also to ask Adel. Adel, we discussed here about making the first maybe sales approach at idea stage. Maybe some startup founders, they just about to, you know, to start building their product. And I believe it can be quite, you know, maybe tricky to reach new customers, but at the same time, maybe it's quite easy to talk to people without selling them anything, just to discuss about the idea. Maybe you have some thoughts about what would be the best approach to start talking about startup idea now and during this current situation, how to, you know, to find that relevant approach to reach people and talk about startup idea. Adel.
Sure. I think, to be honest, that question has got a very easy answer. You basically have to engage with conversations from the very, very start, and continual conversations. You know, there's different ways that we can engage to reach potential customers, but what you really want to do is have informative conversations where you take the back seat, ask questions, and listen. I think a lot of the times as entrepreneurs or startups, we're quite scared to ask people about our idea, ask about their problems, because we form this sort of attachment to our idea and how it's going to solve someone's problem. And then sometimes we're going to go, well, we don't want someone else to tell us, but actually that doesn't really solve our problem. Now, there can be two ways that you can interpret that. Either there is no problem and it's the wrong customer segment, or really maybe you are not solving the actual problem. So one of the things that, or a couple of things that I would recommend is, first of all, is have actual face-to-face or via Zoom where you can physically see someone and have a conversation, a long question sort of interview where you can get to discover the unknowns of the unknown, right? So sometimes we know that there's certain things that we don't know, but also we don't know what they are, right? So we need to find out, and people are more than willing to tell us, right? And they are more than willing to share their understanding of how you could potentially help them solve their problem even better. So it's really having and engaging those type of conversations. Secondly, and I know people would normally go, you know, you need to do customer surveys. Yes, that's it's really good to be able to do customer surveys and collect data, but then we also have to be very conscious of the fact that a lot of the times when we structure our questions within a survey, it could be biased towards what we actually want them to say, right? So being able to combine the two, having those one-to-one individual conversations, maybe progressing then into focus groups from the information that you extract, make it into a focus group, get them to share share the feedback of your idea. And then from those insights, you can then develop a survey which will be able to reach a larger segment of customers to get more sort of data points into your insights. So that would be my best tip, is really to go out there and don't be scared to share your idea, right? A lot of times entrepreneurs would say to me, but Adele, I can't go and ask people these questions because then I'm giving my idea away to someone else. Maybe they will go out and do it. No, they don't. They won't, right? All of us have many ideas on a daily basis and we don't always act on it, right? There's so many other variables that's at play. It's not just about someone stealing your idea. So those would be sort of my key takeaways on that specific question.
Great. Thanks a lot, Adele. And also, please, if anyone have any more questions or just like a follow-up, or you want to something to clarify, please feel free to text in chat. We are more than happy to contribute and text in chat. And also, again, just kind of a few points about how to make your first sale, and at the idea stage, or maybe you already got some MVP. And just a kind of the reminder that in 2019, it wasn't about how amazing your product, it's about how it helps to solve the pain of customer. And even it's still actual. Now we have a bit more challenging time. So it's about how it helps to customer, how it helps to survive the business, to keep the business of customers if you deal to B2B sector, or how it helps to day-to-day life of the customers, rather than saying how it's amazing. And now what is very important is to understand how the future of your customers will look like, what would happen next, and what they will need next after the coronavirus situation, the lockdown, when the borders will be open and the people more will be able to travel more. So we have to think not only about the current situation and try to propose a product or propose the way we engage with customers in the current situation, but also for the future, what still will be actual, and how the future would look like in the multiple sectors. And I think that's I really want to focus today is not only about the current situation, but about building the relevant sales and business strategy for the next version of our world. And so we need to think today about this. And sorry, and just in order to start, I think before actually pitching to anyone, or maybe proposing a startup idea, or maybe make a first sale pitch, it's very important to kind of answer the question, what's your startup value proposition? What exactly you're offering? What sense it gives to the potential target users or customers? Is it relevant for them for now, or maybe it's something they need in the future? So if you're able to formalize and give very clear, quick answer, what's the value proposition of the product or service you do, it would be much clearer to get positive reply from your end users, because sometimes you can build amazing product or service, but if it's too complex to understand, especially if you have that first impression of the product or service, that would be very tricky to convert that discussion into the sales process. And just a few points. What is also I observe recently, and please, our experts and mentors correct me, or maybe you have some own observation. I see a lot of startup ideas. They currently focused on this COVID-19 situation, and they trying to kind of solve some actual problem right now. But my question is, what would happen with that focused startup focused on that current situation after the COVID-19, when we will have the new version of maybe the kind of the measures, or maybe the people will be able to travel, to live as a life we lived before. So my question, if your startup idea or your sales approach, it will be actual afterwards. And I would advise to make sure that the product or service you provide or build has a long-term value, rather than something for just a very short time frame for the customers or users. And we raised here discussion about B2B sector, how to approach the big organization, or like NHS and some others organizations. And I would love to join that discussion about this sector. But before, we need to have sort of the overview of the kind of what is B2B and B2C, and what the specific of B2B sector exists. And you also, it's important to define what kind of the target group you work with. Is it B2B sector or B2C? So what B2B sector has as a kind of the minors, the B2B sector, and especially when we will start talking now about some more big organizations like NHS, looking like a huge, almost like an industry type of companies, covering the majority of the industry. It has a longer sale process, and also it potentially can have limited scalability, because B2B products can have very niche target group. It also depends on the professional network you have, or maybe access to that professional community or network in order to make that sale. And on another hand, there are so many industry-related problems. If we take a look at healthcare sector, definitely we have so many things to solve and to manage. And also it can be profitable since first time, what investors love to hear. If you manage to make a first sales and bring revenue to your startup, that could be great. And also sometimes you don't need to even promote and use advertising to promote your product or service. You just need to reach right people and right organization in order to promote, propose your offer or solution. And if you come with real innovation, you can have much less competition for your product or service, because if it's something needed, or you really manage to optimize some business processes or save time and money for businesses, it would speak for itself. So now I would like to connect also Adel. You maybe still can contribute to that discussion regarding how to reach these big organizations, maybe especially if you're early stage startups, when maybe they have lack of sales, or maybe a lack of recognition, how to approach these big organizations in maybe also traditional sectors. What would you recommend? And I would love also to invite our guest experts to contribute. Adel, first, please.
Sure. The B2B, selling into B2B is extremely lucrative, but very, very challenging. And I think one of the big key things in terms of mistakes that I've seen startups make is actually targeting these really big organizations, right? The last thing you want to do is go into a sales cycle of 8 to 12 months. If you have the cash flow to carry yourself operationally for 12 months, if this is your first sale, by all means do it, but the chance of that, the probability is definitely almost zero, right? Also, the other thing with really large companies is if you are a startup with no previous track record, so this is your first sale, they can literally kind of influence and have a hold on you as a startup much easier, right? So they can really kind of dictate how this decision-making process is going to go, and they can kind of hang you on a lead for quite some time. So if you do B2B sales, it's extremely important that you already have either a very strong salesperson with a sales experience selling B2B, within the startup, because the buying process, who you actually target within a business is very different to B2C. You have different decision makers at different points. You will have to sell to the technical buyer and need to identify who the technical buyer is. You will need to sell to the economical buyer, and you need to be able to identify who that is, and that's the person that kind of manages the budget. You need to also be able to identify someone within the organization who can kind of give you inside info of their budget cycles, and then knowing when to go in. You know, there's a strategic way that you can go in a certain time period within a large organization where you know that either they are making budget available at between X and Y months, or you might know that this is in a year's time, this is when the next budget will be made available, and you can kind of start building the relationship over time, but you might only be selling in 12 months time. So I think it's really important to kind of, if you do B2B sales and it's your first sales attempt, try and go into more of a medium sized business. Now, it is quite a different story also to target small, medium enterprises, because it is slightly different, but go for a less powerful organization when you do business to business. So you can kind of start having that mutual partnership. And it's very important to be open and honest and vulnerable in a way, in saying that this is our first sale. And you want to be smart about it. You want to go in with a pilot, right? Or you want to go in with a trial. So that you can get feedback, that you can build credibility and trust within the organization, so that they can then again be your advocate when you sell into the next business and the next business. And that's really the key points when it comes specifically to B2B sales. And there's many more, but I would literally like to focus on those ones specifically for now.
Bulent, maybe you can contribute. Thanks a lot, Adel. But I guess Bulent, he you know a lot about how to approach businesses and provide, sales approach to them and make it successful. Can you contribute some of your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so I think Adele covered a lot of it. So I would certainly reiterate what Adele said. I think one of the key things is an assessment of your fit, of your product market fit. So in other words, if you've not sold the solution before, really what you're after is much more information about what business problems you're solving, how well do you solve those problems, and who's your target audience. And it's quite rare for startups to think about a solution and get it 100% right at the beginning. In fact, you won't get it 100% right at the beginning. And therefore, in the first phase, I would say maybe change your mindset from selling your first deal in B2B to collaborating with your first B2B customer or your first B2B organization. Because really what you're not necessarily looking to do is to make a sale in the traditional sense, where I sell you the software and you pay me lots of money. Really what you're trying to do is, look, I've got this idea, I've got this minimum viable product. I'd like to work with you, Mr. Customer, because I think it can solve these problems, but I'm sure you can help us with the feedback, and we can make improvements, and then we can work together on that. And the best relationships are around, certainly in the early days, more of a partnering, a collaboration, rather than a pure sale. And this is gold dust for an early stage company, because to get the feedback and to understand much, much better the target audience, who exactly you're selling to, what type of business, what type of size. And I agree with Adele, don't go for the very big companies because you'll fail probably, but you can go for the smaller, or let's say the mid-market, the medium-sized companies, if that's more appropriate. But this is a learning process. You need to turn your MVP and have a much higher level of product market fit and understand the value proposition, understand your buyer, know where these buyers exist, and then be able to then move into the next stage. I think the other key thing as well is, if you have this collaborative approach, what you're not after is a sale in the traditional sense of you pay me some money, but you're after their help, and people are more likely to be helpful to you with their feedback. And what you can ask for, which is also very valuable, is not so much cash, although it would be nice to get some cash, but actually referenceability. So help to get your product market fit up, but also get referenceability, because if you can get them to be a happy, referenceable customer, then you can use that knowledge to gain your first proper customer where they pay, you know, perhaps more market rate, which will be your second, your third, and your fourth customer. And therefore your trajectory will be a lot quicker if you do it that way. So this is some of the ideas.
Thank you very much, Bülent. I think you raised very fair points, and I'm very thankful for this regarding, you know, not trying to make that first sale. And when you reach in the first, especially big organization, it's great if you can come and try to set up some sort of the form of a partnership or collaboration. And I just got a question from Charlie about that. I would add my kind of additional question to this. When you just about maybe to make some pilots or prototype, when do you think it's relevant to go and have this dialogue? Would you rather go to discuss when you at R&D stage in order maybe to see how that building product is relevant to the company you aiming to collaborate with? Or you would prefer, or would you suggest to come with complete version of maybe minimal viable product and say, okay, that's what we've got so far. Can you give us sort of the feedback how we can maybe make some updates and improvements in order to make it more relevant for your business case? What do you think, you know, how to save up time and money as well, and how to make sure, again, it's not too early and it's not too late?
I think the answer to that is it depends upon the quality of your network. Who do you know? If you happen to know some senior people in some large companies and you have some personal rapport, then you can go early. You can say, look, I've got some ideas. Here's some wireframes. We haven't yet fully built it, but what do you think of this? Would that work in your company, for example? Please give us some feedback. If you've got those relationships because of your network or friends of friends or whatever, of course, that's very, very helpful. If you don't, and you're going to have to, you know, cold call almost, or start a new relationship with somebody in an organization, presumably quite senior, then I think it'd be better to wait a bit more if you can, to have something a bit more concrete to show. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be the full MVP. Of course, that'd be great. It doesn't have to be. Some of that could be what we call smoke and mirrors. It could just be some wireframes, some screenshots, etc. But you do need to have something that's more credible, that solves the business problem, in your view anyway. You think it solves the business problem reasonably well, and then get that feedback. So I think it depends on who you know.
Right, Bülent, thanks a lot. And I know someone who can also answer this question. Marka, if you can also join us. And Marka has experience in dealing with the corporate world. And question to Marka then. Marka, how do you think to approach the corporates when you have some startup idea? And then my question may be coming back to your experience, how corporate world is loyal to startups, coming to them, approaching them with some, MVPs or maybe some good new startup projects. What's your thoughts? How to approach the corporates or maybe SMEs as well, and how in general they reply? What's their reaction? Any thoughts?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for that. Technology helps, and I think it's very relevant what the two speakers have said so far. First of all, let's talk about the corporate. We have to be realistic. Corporates have a very structured and complex supply chain, which means, yes, it's nice if I develop a product and I go to Amazon and I can sell it. But let's be honest, we have also to think about the bargaining power, what is called in economy, the bargaining power that we have with a corporate, which means, again, just to be realistic, I'm sorry if I'm disappointing some of your audience, that already the legal structure that the corporate is able to impose on us If it doesn't, it's true. We say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but you know, it's much more a chance that kills you. Let me be honest. When we deal, the company I work for, and it's a very large company. Okay, very large. You know, where I work for is one of the 50 largest companies in the world. Okay, when we have a supply, when we work with somebody, we impose our terms and conditions. And we work with very large suppliers. We work with very large suppliers. We impose them. So first of all, we should have a realistic approach. Who is our target? Who is our audience? Who is our best audience? Who is our most likely audience? Because at the end of the day, what Bullen, if I remember his name, was saying before, is to build the credibility. And most likely we are able to build our credibility by having a step-by-step approach in which we focus on the problem. And that is the other sentence I wanted to pick up. You do the product, and now who should I approach? Whereas I would say, well, why don't we instead challenge this concept, and we say that we could do even the opposite. We try to think, and this is what I do in design thinking or any type of methodology, we try to think the pain of the customer. We start building the products with the pain in mind. And if we have exactly that pain in mind, why don't we engage the customer at that point in time? Think about complex supply chains like airplanes. Can you imagine somebody building a big stuff and they say, okay, now it's there, it's parked there. It doesn't work in this way. So as a startup, why don't we try to engage the customer in a sort of partnership before? Of course, we need to check whether it's convenient, whether we want to do that. There are a lot of other elements that would have merit in this discussion. But just to summarize my answer, corporates, make sure that you understand the bargaining power that you have, the economic power that you have, and the ones that they have against you, and the legal power. And second, if you build a product, and if you genuinely started with the pain of a customer in mind, if you know who the customer is, just don't wait for you to have the product. Just go there, talk with them. How can I make it to make sure that I solve your pain? That will give you possibly, I see from the chat, one of the pain points is our first sale. Well, let's make sure that we mitigate the problems. And one way is to pave the way for this first sale to happen. One of the ways to make it happen is to make sure that we build the relationship before we try to sell.
Right.
It's some challenging thought. You know me, I like to be contrarian and challenging always. It's just to enrich the thinking process and say, oh, well, maybe I gave for granted. I built a mouse and then I go to sell it. Why don't I go to Slav and say, what type of ergonomics would you like to have? And that would give me the idea to develop the mouse. And then I sell to Slava.
Right, Marco, thanks a lot. And yeah, very fair points. And as we discussed and agreed here, I think that a very kind of important to understand that if you just about to launch your prototype or first version of product and you're aiming to reach these big organizations or SMEs or even like small companies, it's better to your first customers, it's much better to come and discuss possible ways of collaboration by knowing and having the dialogue of understanding what they need to and what value you add to their business processes rather than again trying to make a hard sale and ask for money. There is no point, and I believe again that wouldn't be the successful starting points. And I also see some questions about collecting the emails. I guess it's more relevant maybe also for B2C sector, collecting emails before products and prototype launch in order to create sort of the list of people interested into the product. And let me show the slide about the B2C because it has own specific. And B2C sector is quite challenging actually. And coming back to some recent discussions with a few investors, especially specializing on early stage investments, they love B2B sector. They likely, if it's seed rounds or even pre-seed rounds, some of the investors, they prefer to engage only with B2B sector, because it's much more, you know, predictable if the company, startup company, would be successful or not. And B2C sector has definitely some advantages regarding the exposure, the extremely wide target audience, but still B2C sector has some minors, like low loyalty to new product, what we discussed here regarding the the collecting the emails maybe before the start or launch the product. Also harder to define the business model, because the customers, they don't like to pay. They prefer to have some free products or free versions of the product. So again, it can be very tricky and challenging to find some relevant the business model and to create sustainable cash flow, especially at early stage of your business. And at the same time, it can have extremely high scalability of your exposure. If you think about the products like Airbnb, I don't know, social media, TikTok, so viral type of startup ideas. And at the same time, some products, they don't require too much industry experience. And also it can have very short sales process, because if you showed the product and the product looks very interesting, you can attract potential customers or users very quickly. And then my question still would be how to convince people to download one more app or to use one customer app or tool or solution. And honestly, for last 2 weeks, I didn't set up any new application to my mobile device. And even I believe there are some nice applications exist. It's still very hard to convince me. Even I'm very tech guy and I'm really, you know, looking for good ideas and startup projects. I'm still not loyal to download more and more applications. So that's very important to understand. And as probably what was discussed in chat, is it worth to create that sort of the community or list of people interested to keep an eye regarding the product launch, and when it's a good moment to do it. And now I would like to invite Rizwana. So Rizwana, if you can join our discussion and also let us know your thoughts. How do you think, you know, to create that community, or maybe what would be the right moments to start engaging with target audience during development or just right after you launch your first version of product?
Yeah, what I'd say is that I think it's very important for you to engage with your audience, your potential customers, your potential clients before launch. The reason is you want to gain their trust, their feedback. It's going to help you develop the product and drive continuous improvement as well with the product. Yeah, but I say that's it in a nutshell, I would say.
Would you recommend something else on top of this email lists of potential users or people interested in your startup? Any, I don't know, social media groups, or I don't know, any meetups, maybe virtual meetups to discuss maybe with potential users, to make a kind of first demo sessions, just to kind of to explain what you're trying to build with some potential users or customers? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah. Online, you can use Twitter, use Twitter to promote the pre-launch, just gathering some kind of a momentum basically and excitement about the product launch, as well as on engaging on Facebook as well, speaking to your customers about the product, what they think about it, the price points. Again, that's all about improvement, the product. Yeah, and that's what I'd recommend. Offline as well, yes, you can. Difficult so now because of the social distancing.
Yes.
You're ordinarily, yes, offline, yeah, focus groups you would put together. But yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Thanks a lot for recommendation. And please, I just got a question from Charlie again, coming back to the B2B sector. Basically, the question is that how to find these relevant connections and how to engage with these organizations if you're trying to reach some people in the company in order to maybe even offer just a kind of collaboration, not to try to sell the product. And Charlie mentions that she tried to connect via LinkedIn, but somehow it didn't work. What would you recommend? How to start, or maybe how to reach right people in the big or medium-sized organization in order to make sure they can at least to hear what you propose? What would be your advice?
Yeah, you need to do some research, some background on that person and that company first of all. It is about asking the right questions, even in your subject line when you speak to them on LinkedIn. Bearing in mind, it does take a minimum of probably at least 3 attempts to get their attention. Once you have their attention, it's amazing. You have this amazing connection. Talk about not all the product and services, but how it's going to benefit the organization. Talk about how they may use the product themselves and how it can benefit them and the organization as a whole as well, B2B. So it is, we touched on it earlier, it's about building relationships and building and improving and maintaining those relationships. That's what I would say.
Thanks a lot. I completely agree with you. Coming back to maybe my experience, if you have no luck, and I've been in that situation, I don't know, 5, 6, or maybe 7, 8 years ago. I was very new on LinkedIn, and I just had, I don't know, 20 connections. And imagine when you're very fresher and maybe you don't have common connections and you're trying to approach someone and people don't see your profile as credible profile, that definitely the chances that you will be able to reach some, experienced, very high positioned person are very low. And coming back to my experience, I would rather find maybe a mentor or someone experienced who engaged with my startup, someone loyal, or maybe even potential customer. And then I probably, politely ask if my mentor can make some relevant introduction or support me by connecting with some right people. And I believe mentor with, significant amounts of experience and track record would get much more success in order to find some right connections for startup founder. And that's what I'm happy to do myself. If startups asking for connections or support or looking for some relevant connections, definitely I make it in very polite way when I'm trying to approach someone and explain. And again, I'm never in the position to promise anything, but at least if I can make that introduction, and if I believe especially that it can work, and I never make any introduction if I don't think that's the right thing, for sure. But if I believe that can be beneficial for both sides, it's great. And just yesterday, I just got a call from someone, said me, thanks. You did a connection with that entrepreneur and it worked very well, and we think how to collaborate and so on. So again, maybe try to find someone who knows that a person you're trying to reach. So that would be my advice. And also, again, it should be very polite and very nice way of doing so. And definitely what is probably important that if someone is texting me and say, oh, that investor, can you make an introduction and send my pitch deck to him or her? And my question, if I don't know you very well, how I can make this, it's question of building a trust. And also it's important to remember that the people you ask to make introduction or any connection, they put own reputation to the action. So it's very important. And all these people, they definitely don't want to look silly or, they also want to make sure that connection would be for a good reason. So again, building the community, building the trust, and looking for for good mentors and advisors who can help you on that journey. We are moving on. Thanks a lot, Rizwana. But also what I want to share and to rise, and I think it's very extremely important kind of point regarding the current situation, because it doesn't really matter if you're looking for exposure on B2B or B2C sector. As you know, now each country have different specific, and not only country, even cities and regions, regarding the measures, regarding the lockdown, regarding the policies of traveling, regarding the policies of visiting some public spaces. Some countries will probably will open, restaurants and other facilities quicker than others. So again, probably it's not long-term situation, but still, when you're trying to approach, some target audience for your startup, please make a research regarding the different markets and see where it's, harder to enter and easy to enter. What the barriers you have, maybe some regulation issues or policies you need to solve first. And also, what's the cost of reaching customer? What's your acquisition cost of reaching customers on multiple markets? And I know successful examples when company based, let's say, in the UK, and they operate on Spanish, French, in Portugal, different markets. So again, it's not about your physical presence, it's about how to reach the target audience you need across the different markets. So if you feel that it's very hard to reach some customers on the one particular market, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to do somewhere else. So it's question of research, and definitely a question of asking some people with experience and having expertise in certain markets. And what is important is, as I mentioned before, the understanding the market is not only about the region or country, it's also about relevant platforms and solutions. So what kind of the platforms and solutions are relevant for your target audience, what kind of devices they use, what kind of the technologies they use, and also what the specific of target audience, what is age group, income, a social group, what they interest about, competitors, what competition landscape you have for particular markets. Do you have a crowded competition or just a few companies? And definitely, I didn't meet any case when people say, oh, we don't have the competition, we are just like completely new. It's never the case. And even you don't have direct competition, you have some indirect competitors. And also, if you find that it's there are some good players on the market you're trying to do with, it's actually a very good sign. If you have very good, successful companies exist on the market, that means there is the audience willing to take to consume these products or services. So please don't be scared of the competition. Sometimes it's very good to have, and also good indicator of relevance your idea to the target group. And also influence factors. As I said, maybe some situation due to the coronavirus, such as retail or some public spaces. So definitely the online startups and projects having sort of I'm not saying the gold era, but kind of special moment when they can build the leverage and increase the loyalty interest of the users. But it's very important also to know how big is your market size, and it should be big enough to be able to scale up your business to proper multiple times scale in next few years at least. And it's very important because definitely investors, they are not looking for very small niche products or services. They're looking for companies with potential to for big exposure. So that's important. And what is very important is to understand who are your competitors, what they do, what the evaluation of the companies, how they're trying to reach the customers. And sometimes the question of sales strategy or business model can be, again, question of research of your competition and your competitors operate on the same or other markets as well. And as you know, it's very important to for even understanding of a startup founder to create that kind of the a product market fit chart or diagram where you clearly understand where do you stay across of the competition. Are you trying to build a product for big organizations or small companies? You're building something very complex or small? But what is very important, and especially I guess in connection to the current situation, it's great if you understand where is your own niche on the market. But please, if you can make, and it's very important to understand how the competition landscape will look like in the future, in next following months, in next 6 months, in 1 year. And not only, you know, when some startup founders, they pitch in amazing ideas and they have, yes, these competitors, they don't doing this, they don't have that feature. But who said that they won't be able to create these new features in next few months? And that means, you know, it's important to understand what the trajectory or what's the development plan or what is expansion plan of your competitors. Not only relying on the fact that the companies will stuck somewhere with no movement and no further traction. So it's very dynamic and it's very changing landscape. So please make sure you have that understanding how it's moving across the landscape of competition. And coming back again to the first sale, it's a bit more about the approach, just my kind of the summary. It's very important definitely to show the interest, but not interest to your product you built, but interest to the problem you're trying to solve by offering your product or service. So it's very important to ask some questions, maybe to make again research about the company or you know, your target group. And again, it's you know, it's not wrong. It's great if you you know, can realize that actually your product is not able to help that particular company. Please don't try to sell something which is not relevant for the customer you're trying to reach. You get unlimited loyalty to from the customer if you clearly and honestly say that, you know what, I know that product would fit to you better than mine, or maybe I can come back to you in few months because I feel that that current stage of our product is not ready for your needs. So the honesty is the key to build the trust and relationship with your potential customers or collaborators. And what is very important, and especially it happens during some pitching sessions with startup founders, when they say, oh, yes, but my product, yes, but we do here, yes, but I know how your product, you know, would be beneficial. It's very important also to listen very carefully what your customers or what the potential customers say, and listen. And it's not sort of the debates, and definitely it's not the argue in between customer and you know, your startup team, or maybe you know, the question how to listen carefully and respond to this these points raised. And if coming back to that partnership, or maybe coming back to that first meeting, is also very important to kind of to see if the organizations are willing to make a test or trial to use your product or service for free, or maybe as a kind of the trial period. But definitely you did first sale successfully if someone says to you that actually I'm really happy to watch and see. And then the question to deliver what you promise, and also to make sure that people can test it out in the time frame you proposed. And definitely you can create a follow-up plan. And I will say the intention of the first you know, try or first LinkedIn message is not to sell. The intention of first connection or contact is to build the relationship, to find some common points or common points for interest, and then you can see how you can expand that relationship or discussion to some pitch or sale, or you know, some kind of the demo of your product or service. And what is very important is how to make your sales process sustainable. Let's imagine that you manage to to show the product or service, or even you got a few first customers, but sometimes you did very good job. You convinced few companies or users to make a test, and they love it. But then the question, how to create that sales process sustainable, how to make sure you're able to scale it up and from 3 customers make it into 30 customers. So that's, I guess, it's very important question to create this, because what, again, if you are looking for investment in the future, or you're looking for business partners or even co-founders, what you need to make sure that you have sustainable track record of sales growth, or growth of your user base or customer base. So definitely I have some thoughts on that, but please, Adel, if you also can join and tell your thoughts on that, how to make sure, again, you can convert one sale into the pipeline of upcoming sales, and how to keep it growing. Especially, what's your thought about the current situation, because I guess it's very tricky now.
Yes, I think apart from the current situation, the actual sales approach will be exactly the same. You need to have a sales funnel, right? I think a lot of the times we forget that we actually have to follow a systematic approach, and a sales function is almost an industry in itself, right? We tend to look at marketing and sales as almost the same kind of thing, right? But they're actually quite very distinct functions that owns their own identity and owns their own value proposition, and it's how you then align the two that really makes the magic happen, right? But when it comes to a sales process, there is an actual methodology that you have to follow, and I think a lot of, especially this is very familiar in the corporate environment, but for startups it's sometimes a little bit difficult to make sense of, because you're so eager to go out and sell your product. But you have to have a sales funnel. You need to look at whether you have a B2B business model or a B2C business model, and then build that sales funnel. Have your prospects, qualify those leads, and then how do you what is your strategy of then funneling those leads through your channel to become an actual sale? And that is, what is your post-sales process, right? Because then you have to start nurturing these new clients or customers. Now, whether that's in B2B or B2C, the same applies, right? It's not an outcome. It's not just, we're going to make a sale and now we move on to the next client and the next client and the next customer. We have to take into consideration our customer acquisition cost, like you said earlier, Slava. How much is it going to cost us to acquire this customer, right? Because we have to be strategic. Now, in marketing, we work out what that is, right? It's part of the marketing as well. We need that information to formulate a marketing strategy. So how much is it costing us to go out and prospect, right? And how many prospects do we need? And how do we collect the data to see, oh, it looks like about every 20 prospects are converting or qualifying after let's say every we get 20 qualified leads from 100 prospects, right? So we start collecting that data to make sense, and how we're building our sales funnel, but also how do we build our growth engine, right? Because now we need to look at, what is the customer lifetime value going to be? If it's a transactional business model, that means, well, maybe it's 1 or 2 transactions and that's the end of it, right? But is it built on a long-lasting relationship? Is there upselling happening later on? In B2B, will we be adding additional features and upgrading the version? Do we give that away for free? Or do we actually charge for upgrades? Do we work in 3-year contracts or maintenance contracts, or all those additional values that are built into a contract? Support and training, do we outsource our support or do we actually deliver support? So these are the things that we need to think about to keep that sales process sustainable, because you want to keep generating revenue from the initial sale almost collaterally, right? From a B2C perspective, it's exactly the same thing. There, it's about building community and being able to also measure how you qualify your leads, how you do your marketing, and then how you nurture them, but then also how you engage with them on a regular basis. Because with B2C, it's much more volatile, right? You might sell something now, and then that same person might use your product, but then in 3 or 4 or 5 months down the line, it goes really quiet, right? You don't get any engagement, nothing really in the community, and then all of a sudden they might pop up again. But you might add additional value to their proposal. So it's kind of very much nurturing that relationship within a community environment and adding the value there. But I think the basic principle to all of this is, if you want to have a sustainable sales process, your value proposition needs to create value and solve the problem for your customer. And I think we keep saying this over and over, but it is so important, especially in today's world, is if you're going to work with business to business, go and find, it's not just your product or service that has to be innovative. Go and find out where in the value chain there might be some interruptions now, and you can specifically solve that problem, and you can position yourself within a large value chain. You know, these are the sort of things that we need to think about: strategic partnerships and collaboration. How do we approach that? How do we leverage that to also keep our sales sustainable? How do we identify sales partners or new sales channels? And we just need to innovate in one channel area, one building block of your business model, and you will have you could potentially disrupt an industry, right? So it's all these, it's very complex, and there's a lot of variables at play, but for sales, you need to be able to see the big picture and how all these moving parts are complementary, and its interdependencies and dependencies, and how you can literally, you might be able to tune something on the top here, and it will have a complete knock-on effect on how you really create and deliver value for your customers. So it's really being able to see that big picture for your sales. It's not just separate, it's not an end game, it's basically how you're going to grow and scale your business long term.
Thanks, Adele. And I think we should ask Bulent, because Bulent, you have experience in that, how to keep sales process sustainable. And what I think sometimes is happening, some sales processes looks like a roller coaster. You have ups and downs, you have some sales growth, then it falls down for some reason. But it's not looking good for investors, or maybe not looking good for also, further planning, when you're not quite sure how many customers you're probably going to get in next following months. So how to create that a clear roadmap of the future prospective customers, especially in this changing world? And can you share some thoughts on that, please?
Sure. No, I'm happy to. And just to build on really what Adele was saying earlier on, I think what's important here is to think through what I call an engine, an end-to-end engine. So the marketing effort is very integrated to the sales effort. It's almost one team and one process end-to-end, but with distinct skill sets. So really the role at the top end of the funnel is to target your target audience and to generate leads. Now, in today's world in B2B, most organizations will self-serve themselves up to maybe 40, 50, 60% of their buying process. They will do themselves before you even know about it. So that's a challenge for us, right? Because they're already looking at people like us and maybe others and making decisions. So it's important that you have a really good marketing engine to position yourself in the market, to have the right value proposition, the right messaging, so that when they find you and they land on your website, they go, wow, this is the sort of company I'm really interested in. And then once they engage with you, then it's a matter of converting that through the sales funnel. So you might have automated nurture tracks or ways in which you can send out more information. Obviously engage with them if they've contacted you, and qualify them through to a deal. Now, when it gets to sales, the key is qualification. The most important resource for any salesperson is their time. So you need to spend your time wisely and almost have a different mindset, not about why I want to sell to you, Mr. Potential Customer, but ask yourself, why should I spend my time working and talking and selling with you, or discussing this with you? Is it worth my time? Now, you don't want to say that outright because that's rude, but you think about it yourself. So you have to really be very, very targeted and very, very clear. Some people have heard about sales qualification using a 4-letter acronym, BANT. I don't know whether, is that familiar with you? BANT. This has been used for many years, and it stands for budget, authority, what's the other one? Need and timing. Now, that's quite difficult to use in the modern day. In 5-10 years ago, you could do that. But today, the modern version of that is PACT, P-A-C-T. You might want to write that down, P-A-C-T. And P stands for pain. So in your early discussions with your prospective customer, find out what pain points they have and think to yourself, can I genuinely with my product solve that pain point, or am I wasting my time? Okay, so that's about pain. The A is authority. Who am I dealing with? Am I dealing with the right people, the right authority? Are these people decision makers? Are they influencers? Are they just technical buyers? Are they, PAs who are just doing a tick box exercise? So you need to obviously understand that. And if they are low down the organization, find out who the economic buyers are, who the influencers are, who will make those decisions. The C is around consequence. This is a really important one. So P-A-C-T, the C is about consequences. In other words, you've got a problem to solve. We talked about that in P. If you cannot solve that problem, what is the consequence? Is it small? It's a minor annoyance, it's an irritation, or is it really big? Like we're going to lose money, or we're going to lose people, or there's a really major problem. The bigger the consequences, the better that sales opportunity is. And the last one is T, and that's really to do with timing and to find out, are they likely to buy something next year or in 3 months' time? Obviously, if it's next year, well, don't waste your time too much. Make a nice impression and put a note in to call them in 9 months' time. But if it's a much more urgent opportunity, then of course that's better. So PACT is a simple acronym to use to help qualify an opportunity and make sure that the salespeople are using their time wisely. So that's what I would say is one of the components of making a sales process sustainable.
Thank you very much, Boleyn. And I completely agree with you. And when you're thinking, about approaching people on LinkedIn or looking for connections or introductions, I 100% agree with you that the best sales process you can do is to make sure when sales managers of certain organizations looking for you, they can find your company or organization themselves. So if you manage to do so, you are solving 50% probably of your sales strategy and plan. And just kind of the evidence, what I'm talking about, and I didn't follow for that, but I just want to share you a few points. As just 2 weeks ago, we had investment pitch day of our Elegant Accelerator, and we had attendees from 31 countries joined our accelerator. And I just sharing the screen with you. So basically, how people can join us or how they find us. So if you see here, if you type in Google investment pitch day, the first page out of 42 million of results, our investment pitch day by Elegant Accelerator. And our website club also appearing is one of the first results. And the first one is ours on Eventbrite. So again, when the people looking for some good product or service, what they usually do is they trying to Google and they trying to to find some relevant supplier for the service they have. So the best job probably to do is just to find a way to, to create a marketing strategy, or maybe optimize your website, your social media, and make sure the people able to find you on social media and and on definitely on the Google, because that's what I'm doing first time when I need some relevant company or product or service. I use LinkedIn or I just Google. And definitely, if you're able to manage to appear on the first page of results, these sales managers will be able to find you much quicker, and they would call you rather than you trying to approach and make a hard sale and increase the cycle of sales process. So I completely agree with you, Bulent, and thanks a lot for your contribution. And also coming back to my experience, I think it's very important to show the consistency. When I started the company in 2006, a software development company, so the question was, what kind of product and service we offer. And over these years, we showed the consistency that we are not offering this service for 1 year and then we disappeared, and the company is not exist at all. And what was one of our unique selling points, that anytime after we delivered some product or service for customer, we were still been there. We still were ready to operate and provide service for our customers. And I also see some new ideas, some new projects appearing on the market, and then they disappear in a few months' time. And what I would advise, if you get the first rejection from some potential customer, they probably will see your consistency. And if they realize that 1 year after your first approach, you're still on the market, you're doing well, you show the track record, you get more and more customers, they will see that actually you're the good company and maybe you provide some good service. So please don't be scared by first fail and maybe the first moment when you realize the people are not willing to try a product or service. But if you show that you came with very serious intention and you really want to build the engagement with your target audience in long term time frame, you will get your customers in the future. So and I think what is important is in order to create the sustainability of your product or service is just to create really like a process and plan how to make it. Definitely, first initially it's need to make research, build a sales strategy about the pricing, what channels to use, how to advertise, what tools you will use, what the targets and KPIs you have. Then optimize and create the plan for a process, for sales process. What again, you launch in this advertising or activities on different channels, you measure, you see how it goes, you run multiple campaigns, you track leads, you do promotions, you create the team inside of your startup, or maybe you organize yourself and make sure again you make it sustainable, and use some certain CRM tools. And then you deal with deals and clients. And actually, I think what is important is to focus not only to get the customer, but also to make sure the customer is happy and you deliver what you promised after you did the first sale. And I think it's never, there is no final moment of your sales process, because even you got first sale with your customer, they can come back to you again and again if they're happy with the experience you provide and with the quality and delivery. So I would say if you prepare for a long-term marathon, so definitely it's not a sprint run, it's a long-term journey. And if you just do consistently the same dedication to your work, and the people observe it, and you get these results from time to time. So that's my points. And also we discussed about the business model. Previously we raised that topic that, and it's very important, and especially it's very important regarding in terms of making sure your kind of the revenue is sustainable, and also you have a quite good model and a good margin, high margin for your product or service. And also you have some recurring payments in order to make sure you're not getting just like one-time customers, but you have more sales per one customer. So I probably also would ask Rizwana maybe to, you know, if you can tell your opinion on how to find the relevant business strategy for early stage startups. Would you make a different tests and trial before actually, you know, go into the scale plan when you actually are trying to or scale up your sales? How would you advise to define the relevant business model for the startup at the beginning?
Yeah. Yes, it's a good question, that Slava. You need to go back to basics. You need to find out what's the impact to the customer. What is the product? How is it serving the customer? You need to look at what your key objectives are. Develop some KPIs. If you haven't done your customer feedback, do that then, your customer research, as well as your market. So it's going back to basics, really, Slava. Before you actually put your business plan together, before you actually develop a business model, do your background research. That's gonna let you know what's relevant towards developing a business model. Yeah, before you think about even franchising.
Right.
Yeah. You need to do your basics. You can't just jump in and think that you've got a customer there without doing your research.
And I have, sorry, but I'm going to be the picky kind of the picky person today, and I would love to ask your opinion as well. And please, Adele, join us. How to understand that you need to change business model if you just started, you make a first try, and you realize you have no sales? How to define that? Actually, that's a question that something wrong in business model, not in your product, because what is happening sometimes that, you know, people, they think, oh, I should change business model. Oh, I should maybe update my pricing strategy. But the reason why there are no sales is just because the product is not good enough, or maybe it's not ready for the consumers. So where are these moments to define that the model should be changed, or something wrong with product itself, or maybe all is fine, it's just that not too early to make any change? Maybe it's a question of consistency and maybe dedication to do more and more activities before actually you can validate the business model and the product quality. What's your thoughts?
Right. Well, first of all, I'd say that with the business model, you need to look at what's your actual sales process. Before you look at your sales process, how is that product? How's it going to fit the market? And then you think about the business model as well. And Adele, you can talk about this as well, because you've got more experience than I've got with this. So, and the business model doesn't come just like that. You have to do the research, the background first, and then you think about business model. What would you say, Adele?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Yes, absolutely. And I think the best way that we can make sense of this is if when we speak about a business model, and we speak about business models all the time, but we need to realize that within a business model, there's 9 building blocks of your business, right? You have your strategic partners, you have your value proposition, you have your customer segments, your revenue streams, right? Your cost structure. And you need to know how all of this is going to work. Now, when we talk about a business model, what we're really communicating is how we're creating value for our own business, right? So if we talk about we need to pivot our business model, or we need to reiterate our business model, that means we are not generating value within the company. Either we're not making sales, right? Or we're not reaching our customers. It might not mean that we don't we don't deliver value to the customer segment. It might be something within the business model, how we deliver or how we reach the customer. Something might be a bit dodgy there, right? When we look at the customer side, we need to understand that from the business model, you need to extract your customer segment, and you need to extract your value proposition. And you need to, that is a total different entity. When you look at your value proposition, your customer segment, you now will establish how you create value for your customer, right? So this is where you have to go in and say, okay, what are the jobs to be done for my customer, right? What are the pain points? What are the gains with this specific problem that we want to try and solve? And then we need to look at our value proposition, which is our product and services, right? So our features and what potentially from our product will then relieve certain pain points or will encourage or create certain gains, right, for the customer. And once you have synergy between the two and there's a fit that you can identify that your product or service is an actual fact relieving 2 or 3 pain points and creating 1 or 2 gains, that's your product market fit. That's where you go and say, wow, there's a market. We are actually solving a problem and we're creating value. And this is where you have to go out now and say, okay, we've now identified our customer segment. We have hypotheses, right? Because now we have to think as a business, how do we communicate to test whether this will indeed solve the problem? And this is where we have to go out and say, we've got 1 or 2 or 3 hypotheses. How do we validate that? And this is where your KPIs come in, because you need to know what you're measuring, right? Because you're either going to validate that hypothesis or you're going to discard it, right? And I think this is sometimes where startups fail a little bit very early on, is because we don't really look at this as 2 separate. While it's integrated, it's 2 separate things. You have a business model in how you're going to deliver the value you created, and within that, how do you create the value and then deliver to the customer? And how do you validate? Because you have to validate first before you actually go out and sell it, right? Because you don't want to build an MVP on unvalidated hypotheses. You don't want to go out and do that because you're going to waste time and you're going to waste money. But if you have 1 or 2 key things, and this is where you can validate, I think there was a question earlier as well, is you can validate that by just setting up a website and asking the questions, right? And getting people in your network, friends and family. Not always great to have friends and family because they're a bit biased. They will say, yes, it's brilliant, and actually it's not, right? But go out in the network. There's various ways you can go out and do this, but test the concept. And people will tell you. I think we underestimate what people's contributions, right? They want to tell you, they want to say, yes, this is great, but why don't you think about X, Y, and Z? And it evolves. You reiterate until you get 1 or 2 validated hypotheses, build the MVP, and then you can go out there and reach the customers. And again, we said in the early stages, you either do pilots or you give free trials away, or there's various ways that you can start delivering to get that first initial feedback and then build from that. But I think that's a really key concept that I want to leave you with, is really understanding that there's a business model and there's a value proposition canvas, and the 2 is integrated, but you need to really understand where the value is created and where the value is delivered.
Right. And I have just a question. When we discussed earlier that sometimes it's a good approach to create a collaborative approach to some potential customers rather than trying to make a hard sale. And imagine that, and I believe, and I observed such a case studies when potential collaboration worked very well. And actually, it's come in the moment when the potential customer asking, okay, what's your price? How much would you charge? And how to, and some startups, sometimes I'm getting the question, they say, how much should I charge them, for this service? I have no idea. And especially in innovations kind of space, sometimes it's very difficult to define what is actual cost of for the customer. So how would you create this dialogue with that potential customer? Because what startup founders want is to do not destroy the relationship by saying the wrong figure or something like that, but also they don't want to underestimate the value of the product itself. So any advice how to make it work and also keep the relationship but make a fair price?
Okay, well, you need to start with it. What you could just simply give them a range. You don't have to give a specific number, say. Also, when you're talking to your customers, make sure you're using a language that they understand, such as, don't say things like, well, MVP straight away. You're talking about the actual product or the service and how it's going to benefit them. Yeah. So, business language is fantastic for you as an entrepreneur, but your customer's not going to understand that, MVP, they don't understand what that is. What is that? Well, how is that product going to benefit me? So use ranges. Don't actually use a specific price point itself to get their feedback, and then you get an idea. Yeah. What would you say, Don?
totally agree with him. I think sometimes we get very excited when we go out and sell, and we just want to tell our potential new customers all about the features of the product, right? And we can do X, Y, and Z, because you, being the owner of the idea or the product, get really excited about it, right? But it's all about selling the benefits. And sales is all about what the customer wants, not what you want. That's completely irrelevant, right? It's never going to feature in any of this. It's about what the customer wants. And then you start having those conversations. You talk about benefits. You talk about how you're going to add value. People will very seldomly ask for price in the first few conversations. It very seldomly comes up unless you put them in a corner where you kind of scare them off. And then sometimes it's almost like a bias reaction that people will kind of go in with the price to scare you off, and then the whole conversation kind of dies off, right? So it's about building the relationship and asking the right questions. I totally agree with what Rizwan said. There is, you need to learn how to ask the right questions to also make them think about what are the real underlying problems and how does your solution actually benefit them? Because a lot of the time you have conversations and you need to make sure you're having it with the right party, right? You can have a technical conversation when it's the technical buyer, right? But you need to know it's a technical buyer, and you can have the budget conversation and the pricing conversation with the economical buyer, right? That's the guy that sits with the budget. Now, when you start having these first initial conversations, it's going to be about how you deliver value, and you're going to do most of the listening, right? We tend to want to speak more than them because we want to tell them, we get excited. Oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this and this and this. Really take a back seat, ask the questions, let them talk, listen, right? And then ask and make sure that you have action points at the end to say, okay, can we follow up on this in a week's time or 2 weeks' time? Always make sure that you get them to commit to re-engage. And then as you go through this process, what they're actually doing is they are indirectly giving you the go-ahead for the next meeting and the next meeting. So they're kind of leading you through this decision-making process and the sales process. And this then gives you at some point authority to then start asking those questions and having those conversations with the economical buyers and talking in the terms of, what is your buying process? What is your decision-making? Where's the friction areas within your budget, right? Let's talk about that, because it might be that, you want to sell your solution for 100,000, and he will go, well, actually, doesn't even help you talking to me because we have to go to RFP, right? And you might not be playing in that RFP space. You might want to, so you need to realize, oh, okay, so maybe it's worth my while selling my solution for 50,000 or in the range of 50 to 80,000, so that you can directly deal with this buyer and not go for RFP, because he has the authority and the budget to sign off a 50 to 80,000 pound deal. So you have to do a lot of prep work before you start going out and doing sales engagement. It's all about understanding who you're talking with and then nurturing that relationship. And that's really important, because a lot of the times we will wait for the company to get back to us. And in actual fact, they actually wait for us to re-engage with them again, because they also want to see how eager and how consistent, like Slava said, are you, but in such a way that you're not a pain in the ass, right? That they kind of completely put you to the side, but strategically work with that and make sure that you have someone in the inside that you can build a really good ally relationship with, that's willing to share certain inside info with you. It's always very helpful. We do that in consultancy all the time because we need to identify who are the key stakeholders and how you can kind of maneuver, especially when you do big change projects, right? So yeah, those would be sort of my key takeaways on that.
Thanks a lot, Adele. I completely agree with you. I guess the probably it's very important to conclude here that there is no way to be very strict in your pricing and approaching the customers, especially when you make a first sales. It's always dialogue, and what is much more important is to keep that relationship and friendly approach, and it's much more relevant to understand the possibilities regarding the price you offer, and also make a research. Maybe you can also make kind of the understanding what's also kind of the financial situation of the of company, especially if it's a big B2B deal or something like that. If you know that they got investment, or maybe they have a lot of cash flow, or maybe they they want to, I don't know, to increase some new departments or directions, that probably would be the perfect time frame. But if you know that the company struggle or suffer, definitely maybe you can offer some complementary trial period, or again some kind of the balance model between, I don't know, flat fee plus revenue. So it can be somehow the hybrid depending on the situation of the company itself, if you talk to B2B sector. And what I would like also to raise, and I think it's very important in comparison to in connection to the business model, as a startup founder, it's very important to create clear also financial plan regarding what would happen in next 6-12 months of your company life, in case of in terms of sales and also expenses. And this is a very common task and very frequent. Kind of the spreadsheet it's needed to be created, especially if you're pitching for investments or looking for a business partner. The first thing they would say, okay, I want to see to your cash flow, or show me your balance sheet and show me your projections regarding the sales, and show me your expenses and when you're planning to break even. So it's very important just to showcase that you clearly that you are kind of the plan is realistic, and the figures you put into the cash flow plan also are reachable. And I have a question to Bülent. Maybe you can also advise, especially in the current situation, maybe what was plans in the beginning of this year is completely not relevant in terms of the cash flow plan and balance sheet. And how would you recommend how to create that pragmatic plan for financials and projections? How to make sure, again, you are not overestimating your projections when you send the pitch deck for maybe the potential investor, but also make sure it's not too low to kind of to keep investor or potential business partner interested enough to follow up. Because very low and very kind of modest figures can lead that investors probably not interested, and business partners say, you know what, your plan is very, you know, low and the projections are very low, so I don't feel the interest. How to create that balance and how to create that you know, optimized cost structure cash flow plan for the future? Any advice?
Yeah, you're right, and it's quite difficult, really, because you're right. If you do it too optimistic, it's not realistic. An experienced investor will just look at it and pretty much dismiss it, which is not good. Equally, if it's too low, it may be realistic, but it's not very interesting. So why would anyone bother with you, let alone invest any money? So it's very difficult to find the right balance. If you're fairly experienced, then I would say, and if you're good with spreadsheets and you're financially orientated, and of course not everyone is, but if you are, what I would say is you need to do a number of plans. So you first of all get the structure right, making sure that it's logical and you can extrapolate the right level of sales and the costs. You know, you've got the right cost structures, and then I think you just have to play with it over several days. So put in something that you think is realistic, see what it looks like, and do what I call what if analysis, and do sensitivity analysis, meaning if you construct the model whereby, what if we can make just one extra sale a month? What does that do? Or what if we can't do that, and actually it's going to take 3 months to make a sale rather than 1 or 2 months for a sale? What does that mean? You know, and then play with that, and that looks, you know, maybe not very good. And so begin to work with a number of variables, and then try to judge it as the right balance. But the reality is, it's very difficult to do if you've doing this for the first time, or you're not very financially minded. So my real advice here is to get somebody who's an experienced part-time, you know, finance director, or somebody who's experienced, you know, a CFO, to maybe, you know, help you with this, and to be able to build a model that works, and build a model and a balance that gives you some level of confidence that if you can construct this model, you take it out to investors, and it will strike the right balance. So probably best to get some advice if you're not specifically experienced to do this.
Right. Just a very short add-on questions. So what do you advise, let's say if you speak about the investment proposal and you send the business plan or your projections, what do you advise to send maybe few scenarios like optimistic plan and also pessimistic and kind of the plan you go currently? So you kind of can showcase the range of the scenarios and plan A and B and C you have in mind. So you kind of show that you understand that something can go not very well, and that you kind of also check that certain figures not going below some limits. You also should kind of keep on track.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea because really the investors will do that for you anyway. so one plan, that's exactly what they're going to do, right? They're going to go, I don't believe this sales projection. Let's cut it by 60%. And what does it do? Oh my God, it's terrible. Yeah, okay, we'll pass on this one, right? They're going to do that, right?
Right.
So you are correct. If you can do it for them to minimize them doing it in a wild way or in a ridiculous way and give them some better boundaries for them to be thinking, it's a good thing. And I think also you are right. It shows a level of awareness that in real life, spreadsheets don't work out in real life. The revenue doesn't always go up in a nice linear fashion by putting a formula in and hey presto, that works. Of course, the real life doesn't work that way. So yeah, I agree. If you can show a kind of a sensible mid-range, a slightly more optimistic and maybe a fairly pessimistic way, and even if your pessimistic is reasonable and it's quite interesting, then there's a good chance you'll get a face-to-face meeting and you'll have an opportunity to sell some more.
Right. And then the question, I guess, is very actual for the current situation. Imagine some startup founder created a cash flow plan for 2020, and then we realize something went wrong and it's not going that way. So how often would you recommend to review and update that cash flow projections internally, at least? Is it something you should do once a month, maybe, I don't know, once a week, or, especially at early stage, in order to kind of to see how that kind of initial plan goes according to your projections you did in January?
Yeah, no, you should absolutely watch it like a hawk. I think as a founder, that's one of your key jobs at the beginning. Yes, I know we'll get excited about building product or maybe, going out to sell. But if you don't have any money and you run out of money, well, you know what happens? You crash and burn. And that's not a clever thing. So you've really got to watch the cash. So it depends on your runway. If you've got 6, 9, 12 months, okay, you can maybe be a little bit more relaxed in the early months because you have some time. So I'd monitor it at least weekly. But you might say monthly, but I personally want to do it weekly, right? Even just a quick 10 minutes, make sure you're okay, nothing silly is happening. I think once your runway gets shorter and you haven't got many months to go, I think it's daily, or at least every other day, because you can't afford to run out of cash. You just can't. And the other thing I'll say is the closer you get to your cliff edge, the more desperate you will become. Investors, especially the experienced one, can smell your fear from maybe 100 meters, right?
Yes.
Okay. Almost as you walk in through the door, they can see it in your eyes. They can smell it in the room that you might be desperate, or even on a phone call or a conference call or a Zoom call, they will be able to work out that this guy or this founder, this individual is getting pretty desperate. That's not a great place to be. That really isn't a great place to be. So start fundraising as early as possible, because it takes a long time. Whatever you think it might take, double that estimation, at least. Because if you can get money early, you can pick and choose a bit more. Hopefully you might get 2 or 3 investors interested. You're not desperate. You can take your time, get the best deal, choose the best terms. But if you're getting close to the end, you won't have much power to do that.
I completely agree with you. And just several times I heard that investors say, okay, I'm not getting excited too much about the idea, but show me your cash flow. And if the cash flow is great and your projections and also the previous track record is amazing, maybe I just not, not your target audience, and maybe, I just don't understand your product, but show me the proof of your track record. And I think that a spreadsheet should be probably the best friend of startup, of founder of startup. And if you have very good track records, a sustainable cash flow, and no, high expenses, and also, I think what would be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Bulent, that what would be the great proof of, kind of the maturity of startup founder, if you show, let's say 12 years of projections, and then the curve, how was you accurate according to these projections? And I think that accuracy also shows some kind of how realistic you are. And definitely it's great if you show the real figures higher than your plans, but definitely it's not good when the actual figures are much lower than was your initial plan, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the more proof that you can show that you understand and you're realistic and you can deliver against your plan, the higher level of confidence they'll have in you as the founder. Because investors invest not just in the product or the target market audience, or the opportunity, but really, 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 they're investing in the founder or the founding team. Do I believe them? Do I trust them? Are they going to be a great partner? Are they going to be giving me lots of horrible surprises in the future? Or can I really have faith in what they say and what they project? Because, to have horrible surprises is a very bad thing. So you're right. Any proof that you can deliver against what you say and you project gives them a lot of confidence, for sure.
Right. Thanks a lot, Bulent. And we just carry on. And I just want to raise some also actual topic about the sales. And I had recently multiple calls when people, they just kind of really struggled with the sales, and they'll say, okay, I don't know what to do. I have 0 sales for last months and nothing is happening, even before, the situation was great. So my also kind of the question to our guest experts, and please feel free to ask your personal question in chat, how to react and what to do if, for that current time frame, maybe for current situation, and even the big organizations and successful startups, like even Airbnb, for example, they have some challenges with definitely this sales process because of a lack of traveling, and definitely it's affected industry by lockdown. So the question how to react and what to do next, definitely maybe the panic is not a good kind of the idea for this, but also I think still as a reminder, it's very important to focus on tomorrow and see how the future of your sales process would look like after the measures would be released, or all these kind of the public spaces will be open, and how the future would look like. And I think also it's a very important, and I observe 2 categories of entrepreneurs. I see now and previously in April, in May, that some of entrepreneurs, they really put on hold everything, and they just wait for the better time, and they do nothing in terms of reshaping the vision and strategy. And second category is really thinking beyond the current situation and really think, okay, yes, we don't have sales now, but instead of waiting for the better times, or maybe everything will come back to the normal life and so on, they just do reshaping. They make some updates in R&D. They creating the new updated versions of product. They build the partnerships. They build support. They provide support for the customers. They build the product awareness, and they see how the startup would look like in a few months' time. So again and again, my thoughts about not the figures regarding the sales you have today and now. It's also about the future. and the transition of the kind of the business models you had previously, probably even they were very successful, but kind of seeing the future. And I also would like to ask Adele first, and then for sure our other experts today. So Adele, what do you think startup founders should do? When is the moment to react and maybe to make online version of product, reshape again the value proposition? Is it something they should do themselves, or it's better to see to the market leaders and see how the leading companies make changes? What do you think? Is it something kind of the standalone process, or it's better again to wait when the leading companies will come with some updates, or maybe regulations, or government will come with some updates regarding how the future would look like? So what would be the best advice? Where's the border of doing an action and waiting for some news? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think the clear answer is, as a startup owner and a business owner, you can never just wait, right? The day you wait is the day you have a slow, painful death, right? I mean, now what's happened during the COVID times, what has come to show us is we've already been experiencing exponential growth in technology and change and uncertainty and ambiguity. We've been in this kind of environment. We haven't been. Certain industries were more affected than others. I think what the COVID's done is it's literally affected predominantly everyone at the same time, right? We know some industries were less affected than others, we know that, but as a general, almost everyone went into shock at the same time and kind of went through that standstill process of just processing what has just happened, right? Because it's a global event that's happened. So we also have to take into consideration that we are human and we have emotions, and we also have to work through certain environmental impacts that will have an emotional consequence, and how we all of a sudden need to go back within to find ourselves and pull that resilience back out and go, okay, how do we fix or solve this problem, right? Because now we have a problem that we probably weren't anticipating at this scale. So my answer to that is, before COVID-19, I think all of us as entrepreneurs and startup owners should have already anticipated the transition towards technology and a hybrid approach in selling and reaching your clients and your customers virtually and face-to-face. What happened now was we had a complete disruption in the customer engagement segment of our business model. How do we build our customer relationships, right? We know for B2B, always face-to-face direct sales, really good, right? Profitable, building relationships. And all of a sudden we had to switch over. But look how quickly we adapted to doing Zoom session, business meetings on Zoom. So to answer, because there's no one easy answer to this question, but my advice would be is never to stop and really now go within and really find out what is it that you want to do. If this business is something that you're passionate about, that you can either pivot in such a way that you can really solve a real world problem within this uncertain business environment, understanding, and there's so many conferences and webinars out there these days where we have experts sharing and academics sharing their understanding of what the macroeconomical impact is going to be, what the future is going to look like post-COVID. Attend those webinars to really get an understanding of what the experts are talking about. Now, they all have very different opinions, right? There's no right or wrong answer here, but it's being aware of what are the potential technological regulatory changes or policies that might be up and coming, right? And we should have had this in mind in any way, because we knew it was going to happen at some point. We just didn't know it was going to happen so quickly, right? So as an entrepreneur, we always have to be able to look within the whole context of the business environment. But this time it's very important to go within and to really say, okay, what is the future going to look like for me and my business environment? What is it that what is the position that I want to take with my business, and with which companies do I really want to work, right? Who do I really want to collaborate with? What are your core values and what are their core values? Because moving forward, it's going to be a lot of emotional buying, right? We're going to see much more of the functional buying being left behind, and it's going to become much more relationship based, much more emotional. And although we might be physically separated, we're going to be much more closer when it comes to actually connecting at a almost spiritual, emotional level, because all of a sudden now we realize that this is really what's important. And I want you guys to think about that and take it as a takeaway, because this is really the type of questions that we should be asking ourselves, rather than just what is our business strategy going to be, but what is the why of my business moving forward, and how do I choose to deliver and make a real impact in creating this new world that we're moving into.
Absolutely agree with you. And Rizwana, please let us know your opinion. And just my quick observation that still I think that current change is basically transformed our communication and engagement from offline to online activities. But I don't see any problem in terms of if our reputation as founders and reputation as company reputation was there, it's still there. It doesn't really matter. It's just a different channel of transferring or communication, engagement. So I would rather, kind of looking back to the future and thinking, okay, what would happen if we have lockdown of internet? If you build your reputation and your brand and name and engagement with your customers, okay, maybe we will have to send the post letters, or I don't know, to send birds to kind of to reach some customers. It doesn't really matter. The question, what value you still provide to the customers? And then my question would be maybe to worry not about the channel itself and not worrying about the way of delivering something, but about the value you deliver via multiple channels you have. And, maybe now we have just kind of the internet or online channel. And I believe maybe in the future, we have some extra, completely new ways of engagement with customers and potential partners and, collaborators and employers. So then my focus probably would be looking just beyond one channel of kind of the communicating with the potential people and network we have inside of our business network and a personal one. But that's my personal thoughts. Rizwana, what do you think?
Yeah, just echoing what you just said, Slava, and what Adele just stated as well. With the pace of the digital transformation happening right now, you've got to view it as an opportunity. No matter that it's challenging times, we all know it's challenging times. What opportunities are presenting themselves for you as a business, as an entrepreneur, as an individual, as your team, and for your customers? Take the time to get to know your customers a little bit more, personally. It could be just engaging with them a little bit more on social media. We've had this conversation earlier. It's about the value proposition and the value of your product, and singing about the value of your product as well. So don't forget that how valuable your product, your service is to your customers, to the world. Don't forget that. And so it's a challenging time, but view everything as an opportunity. Yeah, and then you'll go far, and will succeed as a business, and your customers will thank you. And what you just said, providing value and adding value at the same time.
Bulent, you probably lucky maybe somehow, because when you operated in your company, probably you didn't face that challenge, and probably it's something completely new. So maybe you can give your advice, or maybe you observed some financial crises before. So how to kind of become resistible entrepreneur to these changes and updates and uncertainties? What would be your advice, maybe on the personal level, how to keep resistant and how to adopt as a startup founder and entrepreneur and what lesson we can take in order to still keep our company moving forward and in a successful way. Maybe Bulent, I hope you're still with us. And my question was,
I'm sorry, Slav, I just had to step away for a moment. So please repeat.
So yeah, my question that maybe you can give advice to early stage startup founders. Maybe you observed previously other crises like financial crises, some ups and downs on the market. What advice you can give in order how startup founders can become resistant to those issues on the market, lockdown, how to come through these challenges, and what the lesson we should take as a startup founders on the personal level in order to to move forward, to keep engaging with our audience, and think positive. So without considering this as an end of some kind of cycle of our life, and thinking to stop our business.
Yeah, no, it's tough when there's a saying, isn't there, when it gets tough, the tough get going. And in tough times you have to be strong, and it's difficult. You'll have your moments. You may not be able to sleep very well, or you'll have some quiet times when it's difficult. But I think you need to show a level of resilience, and I think think through the problem. And I think this is a time when having a mentor, or having some trusted advisors, or having people who are experienced can really help you. I remember for me, I had a very good chairman who was older than I was, and he was very experienced. And when I got very anxious with some difficult moments, he was a very calming influence on me. And he would always say, look, calm down, take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world. And think through what the problem is, and try to break the problem down, and see if you can solve part of it. You don't have to solve the whole thing. See if you can move it forward. I think the other key bit of advice is you need to break down and split that which is controllable by you. You can do something about it, and you've got control, you've got influence, and other things which are not controllable. For example, COVID-19, who can control it? It's not possible. If your business is wiped out or nearly wiped out because of the COVID crisis, you just have to accept that there's nothing anybody could do. Whether you're, Bill Gates or Elon Musk or anyone else, or even Slava, you won't be able to then influence that, because that's outside of your control. So I think look at the problem carefully, break it down, and split it between what you can control and influence and what you can't. Don't worry about what you can't. You have to accept it. Don't be anxious. But where you can control something or provide some influence, seek some advice, seek some conversations with your trusted people, advisors, and try to come up with a plan to solve a particular problem. Even if you make a little bit of improvements in one or two areas, that gives you confidence. It reduces the anxiety level. It means you can think more clearly rather than panicking and thinking in a muddled way. And the more clear you can think, and the more incremental changes you can make, you'd be surprised how much progress you can make. So this is what I would suggest. But it's not hard. Sorry, it's not easy. You just have to stay very, very resilient, and realize ultimately it's not the end of the world, we hope, but you just have to make progress the best you can.
I completely agree with you. And I guess the reason, that's one of the reasons we run these sessions like we have today, is just to make a reminder that we are not alone here, and we're here to support each other, and we're here to exchange the ideas, exchange thoughts, to give some advice, and also support other entrepreneurs. And that doesn't really matter what stage of your business. I think we still experience the same challenges, and even investors, successful entrepreneurs. And I would say, when you have the multiple assets, or you manage multiple companies, and previously maybe it was quite easy time, but now it's a challenging time because now I guess early startup founders, they're also a bit lucky because the less assets you have, the less worries and concerns you also have. So and more flexible you are. So running a big organization or successful company, it's a lot of responsibility for employers and stakeholders. So I think again that lesson is about meet and connect with those people who also can support you, and you have the same mindset of thinking positively, and also again keeping reminding about the things you mentioned, Belen, that's something we can change and kind of react and make some conclusions and take the lessons, and something we just should accept and take and kind of to carry on what's going on here. And just a kind of the quick reminder, that's why we are building that our community of like-minded entrepreneurs and in the UK and also across European Union countries. And if someone of you are feeling lonely on the way of building a tech startup, please don't feel that, and join us to make together, join our workshops and sessions, and we are more than happy to support. And I'm very thankful to our guest experts and mentors today for joining us. And yes, if you're interested to run a startup and build sustainable track records, please take a look at our accelerator program. A quick update about what's next. So next week we have a special workshop about finding a co-founder and building a team for a tech startup, 18th of June 2020, 6 p.m. London time. 20 of June, breakfast with tech entrepreneurs, 10 a.m. So please book a ticket on Allegiant Club or Eventbrite page. And also the big workshop on 25th of June, how to build a tech startup from concept to international markets, the most demanding workshop we have. So again, you're more than welcome to join us. And just a quick reminder, and thanks a lot to our experts, Bülent Osman, board advisor, mentor for startups, mentor of Allegiant Accelerator program from the UK, and Rizwana Shah, a representative at Faster Capital, startup mentor and advisor, mentor at Allegiant Accelerator. Thank you very much for joining us. And Adel Botha. So multiple of titles: healthcare IT consultant, startup advisor and mentor, business coach, speaker, solopreneur, and mentor at Allegiant Accelerator. Adel, thank you very much for joining the session, contributing to the discussion. So again, one more time, feel free to connect via LinkedIn and join our next session. And for now, I really thankful for your contribution, Adel, and Rizwan and Bülent for joining the session. Thank you very much. And thanks to our attendees. And again, feel free to find all our speakers online on LinkedIn, or just join our next sessions. And thanks for your questions. We will keep the chat, and if someone is interested, we can follow up on LinkedIn further. Anyone to comment? I'm happy to listen to your final words.
I just wanted to say thank you, Slava, for once again hosting a fantastic workshop, and even more importantly, thank you for all our participants. I know it's been quite an intense 2 hours, but thank you for staying with us. And please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have posted my LinkedIn down there. So if you have any questions or want to explore further what the Elegant Club has got to offer, then please do reach out. And again, thank you to Rizwana and Bülent. It was fantastic to share the platform with you this evening. You guys are just such an inspiration to listen to. And have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Slava, from me as well.
Yes, and thank you from me as well, Slava, and everyone.
Thank you very much. As I said, feel free to go to allegiant.club to see more details, or find our experts on LinkedIn or me with our names. We are very active and more than happy to support you on your journey. I'm finishing the session. Thanks a lot one more time, and see you next week. Bye-bye.